To know that you trust them and that you love them. And if you can do a good job of showing that to them, you'll be able to do that in your marriage relationship. And so us guys especially, we need to be able to do that. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and look at marriages is to be contracted with God as parents, parent figures, and or your pastor. This might seem old-fashioned to most people, but, you know, how many of y'all seen that movie Courageous? How many of y'all seen it? Okay? In that movie, there's a scene where a young girl, if y'all saw that part, where she was interested in some guy, right? Now, it's not always some kind of thug or something, right? It can be someone who maybe is a Christian even, right? And what did that daddy do in that movie?
I didn't see it.
What did he do?
He spoke to the black family had us talk.
After he terrified that young man, what did he do?
Oh, after.
He did what?
He made the guy go away. First, he didn't make him go away. He gave him the choice to do things right or to leave. And then he had to tell her why he did it. And then he showed her the true biblical reason when he took her out to dinner.
Right. Exactly. That dad took his daughter out to dinner, right? And he gave her what? A ring. And that she would wear that ring until when? Until God, what? Brought the right person into her life. See, he didn't say until me and your mom brought the right person. When we say parents are to be involved, we don't mean parents are God. But God uses the parent. If you don't respect your parents' advice, that means that they're decent parents, then you're not respecting God's will. Okay? So that's so important. So that movie, that was a good guy. And, you know, it's sad to say, enough fathers don't do that today. It's like I said before. We have a breakdown in society. We have a breakdown in the home. And so we don't see these type of things going on. But that dad realized that his daughter had a need emotionally that was being filled by another guy. So he said, I need to step up and be that void, filling that gap, that void, so that she doesn't have to go outside of our home. You see that? And a lot of times that's missing in our home today. And that's why so many of our young ladies go outside the home. Because they have that need. They have that need. We all have that need. And we need to fill that need. And that's why you see all across public high schools, guys and girls kissing and hugging all over each other because they're trying to fill that void. And they're half of the day some of them are crying and they're in and out of relationships and all these things. But that's not God's plan. That's not God's way. But they have that need that's not being fulfilled by their family. And so there's a wall there, not just even the parents' fault, but it begins to be a pattern so that the young person is not able to know how to develop the proper relationship. So she developed that relationship outside. We see it with gang members. They do the same thing. It's no different. They're trying to fill that void or that need to belong. We went to go visit the Mapes. Some of y'all know the Mapes. Their granddaughter, she's about 20 years old now, and I met the dad. I hadn't met them before. I met the mom. And we were sitting at dinner. Oh, man, she can cook, man. Roast beef and all that stuff. And we're sitting there eating and trying to think. And it was hard for me to think because the food was so good. I was trying to get that brain power up so I could have a conversation. So it was tough. I did it. And it was neat because they had a young man there who was going to college. And then she was going to, I think, some kind of technical school or something to prepare for something she was doing. And they were interested in one another. It was so neat to sit there. We all had dinner. And the young man was like, you know, he was all, you know, innocent, just sitting there like he was all nervous and stuff like that. That was the cutest thing in the world. And a very intelligent young man, very godly young boy. And then she was sitting there, and they were sitting next to each other, they smiled. And you can just see the excitement and anticipation, you know, of them being together. Even though the parents were around and seeing that. But what impressed me is how involved the parents were in that relationship. And how the young man was able to sit with the dad, and they were able to hold a conversation and talk about things. And it was about spiritual things, and knowing what he was trying to do, and knowing where he was going, how was he serving the Lord. You know, he wanted to make sure his daughter was marrying someone who was godly, who was going to be an example. And so and I love seeing that. And it's the way it was supposed to be done. People look at it, they say, well, it's old-fashioned. God says, I'm the same today, yesterday, and forever. God didn't change. You know what? The society back then is not much different than society today, folks. They had drugs back then. They had pornography back then. It was just in live color, all right? Right in front of you, 3D, all right, 4D, whatever you can call it, it was there. But they had all those things, okay? So it's very important we understand these things. Also, we see that Romance today says, I suggest that the father of our faith, Abraham, would have been horrified to even think of his son Isaac indulging in what most Christian and pagan young believers consider a vital part of their modern dating lives, the way they go about doing things, okay? It just was unheard of back in those days. If you go to India and you go to any website, you look up Indian people in India, they still go through certain procedures. They don't do it exactly the biblical way, but they have arranged marriage. And I don't believe this is what we're talking about, where the mom and dad choose your person you're going to marry. You never ever met them before. And I mean, they just kind of force them into this thing. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about from day one, that there's a relationship between the kids and that and the whole thing, and you have some involvement in that too. That's what we're talking about. So it doesn't work exactly that way. And so we see that modern dating is characterized primarily by emotion. Usually emotions first, fleshly desires and the values of the world, where selfish interests predominate. And most of the time they want this relationship for selfish reasons. It's not usually so I might serve the Lord better. Or God's not typically the first in that relationship. So you're already starting off with him not being first. You see what I'm saying? It's for other selfish reasons. And so we find that happen quite often in those type of relationships. And so we do have a few cases where the relationship may start off a little different and they may be godly people, and just for lack of knowledge do it a certain way, and it turns out okay, but it's not usually the way God would have it to be. And so we see this highly emotional, erratic, and sentimental system has been made almost a cultural norm. So you guys are born into this. I was born into this. Well, this is just normal. Matter of fact, your generation is even a little bit different than mine, because my mom, to be honest with you, I could not be with a girl. She couldn't come to our house. I mean, that's just what my parents were. Now I understand that. But my mom never gave me a biblical example of that. She never explained it to me. And they were not there for me. So I did have a need that needed to be filled. And I went about things the wrong way. I was not a Christian. You see that? So you know, and they had rules that we had to follow in our home. You know, I had friends that were having babies out of wedlock by the time they were 14 and 15 years old. I had one friend by the time he was 18, he had 2 or 3 kids already. These are the kind of things that was just going on all the time because they didn't have this example presented them. They didn't have those godly homes. And so you have those examples. You have a pastor or youth pastor. You have people in your life that can help you and guide you. If you want what's best for you, you'll seek as much advice as you can get, and much as biblical wisdom as you can get. And so we see it has been around so long. Despite its utter failure to produce godly marriages, it appears to continue to grow in popularity and shows no sign of decline. And so what people do as an alternative is they say this, they go, well, marriages are not working out. We're going to get divorced anyway. They go into it with that mindset, or they don't get married at all. They say, we just won't get married. We'll live together for a while, and we'll see how it works out. And if it works out okay, then we'll get married. And they won't get divorced a year later anyway, because it doesn't work. Okay? And so that's kind of how they come to that summation. So we see in the Old Testament times, it would have been unthinkable for Isaac or Jacob to be riding down the sunset, Palestine sunset, on their camels. Okay? Looking for some ladies, you know. That would have been unthinkable. Somebody would have been shot upside the head, you know, kick them off the camel. So that wouldn't have happened. So nor would it have been concerned about whom to ask out for the weekend or for the big school event or church event. The approach of the Old Testament saints was they just didn't do it. So let's go ahead and look at some things here. What time we got here? I want to show you an example in the Bible.
10:30.
10:30, okay. What I want to do next week, I want to show you an example in the Bible of a man named Samson, okay, who went to his parents, asked their advice, and I want you to see how all that went together. And I want to show you this biblical example in the Bible of how that went. And so we'll find some of those examples. But here we see, believe it or not, God's people in that day believed that mom and dad, especially dad, should be involved in helping to arrange marriages. And this was a responsibility undertaken very seriously by level-headed believers. So to answer your question that you had asked earlier, what if you have a parent that's pushing you to marry the wrong person? These are biblical examples. These are believers that this is all in. So if they're not even believers or not even doing God's will, then they're not even concerned. It's not even an issue. They don't follow this principle. So it's not even part of that. So, but what if you have a parent that's pushing you to marry the wrong person, you're a Christian and you know you shouldn't marry them? What should you do in that case? I mean, because you're supposed to honor your mother and father, and you're supposed to obey them, what should you do?
Just marry them.
Just marry them?
Consider your pastor.
Yeah. Would you in any case marry that person? Would you in any case marry that person? Yes.
Well, I think you have to obey your mom and dad as long as they don't go against that, because that is the first authority in your life.
Okay.
So
You always obey God first, especially if it's a potent situation like this, a vital, important situation like this. Now, if you're talking about a choice where you're going to go to school, and you know God's calling you to a particular school, and your parents say you're not going, what should you do? Maybe you consider not going, even though you know you should. Because it's not as, it is a vital decision, but you want to be able to honor them. But when it comes to something as important as marriage, that you got to deal with for the rest of your life, when they're dead and gone, and your kids got to suffer for this, you don't want to get this wrong. That's how important this is. Matter of fact, every conflict in the Bible stems from the wrong marriage relationship. Every conflict in the Bible. That's how important it is. From our young people to our older people that's waiting for that right person, that's how vital this is. Yes.
Like, I remember when I was in your youth group, we had a young man who started a degree.
You can remember back that far?
Kind of. And then his parents wanted him to play football, and so he went. And they were Christian parents in the church, but they still had different desires that didn't line up. And that kid's life took a completely different course.
That's right. Exactly right. I still remember him, a young man called preach here in the ministry. Yes. So we see here that the father needs to be involved, and this was responsibility. I'm taking it very seriously about that. So we see here, what is the significance of the dad walking the bride down the aisle? And we think about this, we're going to close with this, but think about the whole marriage situation on marriage day. You're getting married, and the woman wears what? The bride wears what?
The gown.
White, right? And what does that white represent?
Purity.
Purity, right? So first we hope that she be pure, but then who walks her down the aisle?
The father.
What's the significance of the dad walking her down the aisle?
He was the godly.
Well, yeah, obviously when he takes the approach to walk her, first of all, it shows everyone that she's got my blessing. But what else does that represent? They're locked. They're locked.
She was under his authority.
Yeah, come here, Patricia. I'm your daddy, okay? You look just like me anyway. All right, so we're locked arm in arm. That means you look good. You're all right. All right, so we're locked arm in arm, okay? We're walking down the aisle. What does this represent? Turn so they can see it.
Oh, it's a bride.
What does this represent? I'm not going to be this happy about it. I am going to be happy, but kind of happy. So if you can mix a frown with a smile, that's what I'd be like. Okay, so we're walking. So what does this represent?
It represents her relationship with you that you're gonna separate and give it to her.
So what does this mean about our relationship before the marriage?
You had a really
You
good
had a good
relationship.
relationship?
Yeah.
With God?
You were her authority. You were the husband of her life in
That's right.
that sense.
That stood in the gap for God. So when I give her away, come on, Darius, no, I'm just kidding. When I give her away, okay? When I give her away, I'm crying like a little baby, I give her away, what am I saying?
She's
no longer
It all belongs to me. Leave father and mother to be what? Cleave to a wife. I got to get out of their business. Now, if they come for me advice, hopefully, godly advice, maybe I can help them, but I want to stay out of their marriage. They're now married. I'm no longer her authority. I'll always be dad. I can spoil her kids, okay? But you can see the relationship before and how it leads to that day. There needs to be that type of relationship with the Father, with the Lord, but some other guy or some other girl should not take that place. It's so important. They say, Brother Will, we should never be interested in anybody. I'm not saying that. But you need to go about it the right way. You ready to get that? Y'all see that picture now? But when you've done everything under the sun, there's no expecting in store, you get married, you've been everywhere, you've been to Yosemite National Park, you've been to the Grand Canyon, you've been everywhere there is to go, you've done all these things, you've experienced all, and then you get married, there's really no that much excitement. There's really nothing to look forward to, because you've done everything. That's usually the way relationships are today. Everything's already been conquered and done, and there's really, yeah, you're excited because you think you love this person, you got married, but it's just not the same. Because their relationship with your parents were not what it should have been. And you didn't spend the time that you should have been. In other words, I'm saying enjoy today. Enjoy today. There's so much things you can be doing right now, and just for the Lord, and just for the excitement of things you can be enjoying. Enjoy your life the way it is. Get enjoyment out of that. Have friends, and go places, and do things, and just enjoy life. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Because I guarantee you, one day you'll look back and say, man, I wish I would have enjoyed my childhood. I wish I would have enjoyed being a teenager. Just be a teenager. You got a lot of decisions you need to make. God has a plan for your life. He wants you to make a decision, first of all, that He knows you're going to be in His will before you even think about being in a relationship with somebody else. He don't want you to find somebody and then do what they want you to do. He wants you to be in His will. So you'll find that person in their will, and you come together and you're both in God's will. Does that make sense? In other words, get rid of the distractions. God doesn't want there to be any distraction. Your head can be clear to think, to do what He wants you to do. And have that peace and be happy in the Lord now. Because that's going to carry you a long way. If you can learn to be content with Him and the people that He's placed in your life right now, and enjoy those people. They won't always be around. Enjoy your family. They won't always be around. They're God's ministry to you. They're the training ground for you. And like I said, if you don't have that godly example at home, that's okay. You know what God requires you. You take advantage of that situation. You be a blessing to your parents in hopes that God will change their heart. Don't get upset with your parents because they made wrong decisions. Don't get upset with them because they do the wrong thing. God still has a plan for your life. Take advantage of it now, because I guarantee life will be a little easier for you if you learn those things now. They really will. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you so much for your word. We thank you for just how you continue